Hey, what's up, everybody? This is JJ Movie Talk episode. This is a mini episode, actually, that I'm putting in right in between episode 372 and 373. This is just a piggyback off of 372, where I talked about the original Taking a Pelham 123. This little episode, I wanted to talk about my top five New York crime movies, just to go a little bit more into detail about that and to kind of keep it going about Taking a Pelham 123. So if you haven't checked out uh the Taking a Pelham 123 episode, definitely check that episode out. And then you can also jump more into this episode and understand why I wanted to continue a little bit of that conversation and everything. So right here, I want to talk about the city of New York as a character in itself and why I feel like it's one of the best like settings for movies and TV shows, especially when they actually film there and everything, because it feels like a character in itself. As I spoke about on episode 372, like me visiting New York and everything, it pretty much is a character, like the different boroughs and stuff like that, and the different landmarks that I saw so many times in movies and TV shows, and then actually to be walking like in these areas, and thinking about, oh, I know this from this movie or that movie or from that show, and everything. It's a cool thing, and I think it adds a lot to a lot of the movies that were actually filmed on location there, um, and everything. So, first question I want to ask is: does any city have a better filmography than New York? And for me personally, I don't think so. Henceforth, why I'm doing this, talking about movies that take place in New York, crime movies that take place in New York. I don't feel it is, but I would love to know what you guys might think regarding that and everything. So definitely you can comment down below because I forgot to mention that this is a YouTube exclusive. You're not hearing this on any other platform. It's not a part of the TV Zone Podcast Network. It is strictly over on J Movie Talk on YouTube. So in order to hear this episode, you have to be listening on YouTube. So definitely comment down below and let me know what city would you consider be better as far as having a movie filmography, if not New York, and everything. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is what makes a great New York crime movie. I mean, the atmosphere. Speaking of Taking a Pelham 123, what made that movie for me so great was that even though a lot of it takes place underground in the subway and everything, but it's still that atmosphere, that claustrophobic atmosphere. In cases, I use Ghostbusters. That's another example of a great with the atmosphere, and you get to see like the city in a whole and total and everything, especially when the ghosts start taking over the city and how it goes to like different spots in the city. To show how it's affecting everyone, and also the real locations. You get real people in the backgrounds. I know in, I believe it's Black Caesar, when Fred Williamson character gets shot on the street. There's a lot of people that are not extras in the movie. Like they really legit thought this man got shot, and I think they actually called the cops. Thinking that, yeah, somebody just got shot out here on the street and everything like that. And then how authentic and gritty, especially in the 70s and the 80s, a lot of the movies felt that was filmed there and everything. It just it just gave a different vibe and feel to everything. And also too how the city affects the story. Like you go into Harlem and how everyone might act there, or you go to Queens or Manhattan. It's a different vibe in each part of the city, and that's what made it so fun, and that's what like make a lot of the movies that are filmed in New York feel a different type of way, and everything. And it's just, and then when you add the crime element to it, all the crime movies for me, uh they feel very much different. And even when I start talking about my five here in a few moments, you'll notice that they are very different aspects of how the city, uh I guess, I don't know how I want to say how the city pretty much like revolves around, or how the story revolves around the city in a way, um and everything. But the city just feels like a natural entity within the stories a lot of times of movies that were made in New York, and everything. So let's talk about this top five. And to kick things off with number five, we're going from five to one. To kick things off, I'm gonna go with the movie I just reviewed, Taking a Pelham 123, comes in at number five. If you want to hear me talk more about that movie, of course, check out episode 372. But for this, I will just say that the subway setting adds a lot to what makes that movie really good. Walter Matthau as a non-traditional hero in a sense. I thought his performance was very good in that movie. One of my favorite Walter Matthau performances, actually, and everything. And also Robert Shaw as Mr. Blue. Like I said on the episode for Taking the Pelham 123, I feel like if Jaws doesn't come along for Robert Shaw, I think Mr. Blue would probably be like his definitive character, because it's just so calm, cool, and collected. It's kind of like I said about him, comparing him and Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber. Like how anytime you think about Alan Rickman, yes, of course, in later years, Professor Snipe and everything because became his, defender role. But for a lot of people, he was always going to be Hans Gruber, no matter what. It's just something about that type of cool, calm, collected character that sticks with you, and everything. And I feel like it's one of the smartest movies, well, smartest thrillers, I should say, um, ever made, really, because it it wasn't a clear cut of figuring out who these people were. They really had to do a lot of work, and that finale is, like I say, is very well acted by everyone involved, including Jerry Stiller, who's there. Um, and like I say, it's just on happenstance of him sneezing, and that's where got you, type of thing. But yeah, that's why that comes in at number five. Coming in at number four, I'm going to go with Taxi Driver. Now, I have a love hate relationship with Taxi Driver. Um, I reviewed that a while back on the pod as well. So if you want to go back and listen to that episode, and everything, you definitely can. But I will just talk about the fact that this movie feels like a nightmare in a sense. I mean, there's a lot of filthy stuff going on, and Martin Scorsese would, so like, I don't know, he was on some demon time when it came to this movie. But New York, it felt like a freaking urban nightmare. I mean, you got underage prostitutes, the city. I mean, it's hot. And then you got this man who just descending into freaking madness the whole time because of his environment, basically. And speaking of Robert De Niro as Travis Bickle, I mean, it's a great performance. It's not one of my favorite De Niro performances, but it's still a very good performance by him. And just to see him slowly descending into madness, uh, yeah, it's something to watch. And the whole way, even though he's in a city that is filled with people, but just that the man who walks alone and how he alienates himself from society, basically. It's very interesting. Like I said, in one of the biggest cities in the country and in the world is also where someone can find themselves being the loneliest person in the world, which I thought was very interesting, also, and everything. But it is one of the most. I feel like it's one of the more influential movies ever made. Also, um, I mean, I don't think you get certain movies to come later without it, just about isolation and things like that, or people, getting into the mind of someone like a Travis Bickle, and everything. But yeah, that comes in at number four. Coming in at number three is The French Connection. Gene Hackman, running around the city. Even though see, the funny thing about The French Connection is that Papa Doyle, even though he's a cop, but he's not a good guy. He just happens to be on the side of good when it comes to this movie, but he's nowhere near a good person. And Gene Hackman was very good at playing these types of characters, and he just knocks it out the park playing Popeye Doyle in this movie, um, and everything. And the fact that this movie, it didn't feel so much like a movie; it felt more like a documentary in a way, because the guerrilla filmmaking that they did. I mean, not having certain permits to film certain places was like, okay, we got to get in and get out, and you could kind of feel it. And I think that added a layer to uh why people enjoy the French Connection the way they do, and everything. And of course, that infamous, famous car chase scene, which I always say, I always kind of use that when I see someone driving crazy or whatever, and everything. Like, oh, they driving like Gene Hackman in the French Connection, because that scene is just insane. The fact that he's chasing this train and having to look up, but also trying to keep his eyes on the road, and just crashing all through the garbage and almost, hitting this woman that's walking her baby, and everything like that, and crashing into a wall and stuff like that. And the fact that he stole that person's car is still hilarious to me. Like, you just destroyed this person's car, but I guess, hey, commandeered the vehicle, trashed it. We'll get you a new car, type of thing, I guess. So, um, yeah, and this movie, it pretty much falls in. I mean, I would say it's one of the movies that is like a blueprint when it came to like gritty police thrillers, because you had to have like this grizzled cop and everything like that. And this movie, along with the Dirty Harry movies, of course, it kind of, brought that more into play, to the forefront, in a sense, and everything. So, coming in at number two, I'm gonna go with Dog's Day Afternoon. Um, I mean, this movie, it gets talked about still a lot, but I feel like it's still very much underrated, in a sense where it doesn't get talked about enough. The fact that it was based on a true story, is it should be warranted enough of why people should watch it. Um, but I think what really makes this movie work, well, I would say this first: the personality of the movie, it feels very much like something in New York, and it's like, wow, this actually happened, and how everyone was dealing with it, that were either inside or outside on the street, how everyone dealt with it. It adds a lot to it. But for me, what really knocks this movie out of the park in a lot of ways is the performances of not just Al Pacino, but also John Cazale, who, that man, is very unfortunate that his life and career was cut short. But the fact that he had no problem taking a back seat, but he never really took a back seat, because even if you watch him in the first two Godfather movies, this these three movies particularly, when you watch him, even though he's a supporting character, but he always stands out in some way, form, or fashion, especially in Godfather Part 2. I mean, that scene when he's talking with Michael and he's in that chair just looking like just completely defeated and everything, that is like his definitive performance to me, and everything. But his performance in this movie is very well done, and I think it would always kind of have this like, what if he would have lived and went and made it into the 80s, and like the type of stuff he might have did. And then also, in the 90s, when you had actors from the late 60s and 70s kind of making a comeback in the 90s, and everything. It would have been interesting to see, like, would he have been one of those actors to make those type of resurgence in the 90s, and what movies he might have showed up in, and everything. But this movie, it feels like New York, in a sense, especially like I say, dealing with the crime genre, at least in New York. It felt very much New York, and of course, Al Pacino on the street, Attica, Attica, and everything, yelling back and forth and all that. And I mean, this movie in some ways plays an influence to Inside Man, with Denzel Washington, Clive Owen. I do believe Spike Lee pulled some inspiration from this movie when he did that movie also, because even the street setup is somewhat similar, like how they're dealing with everything and they're right out there, and everything. So coming in at number one, it shouldn't be a surprise here, and I'm talking about Heat. No movie is bigger, better than Heat and everything. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking about a movie that was filmed in Los Angeles, not a movie that was filmed in New York. But I just had to throw it in there. I mean, of course, I was. Anytime I'm doing a crime movie list, Heat is always going to be at the top. But no, in all honesty, uh, the number one for this top five, I'm going with King of New York. Um, that is a movie that I've always watched since I was a kid. I always enjoyed it, and everything. Of course, as I got older, I really kind of honed in more on the characters and everything like that. I mean, New York as a kingdom in a sense, and how one man feels that he should rule it all, and the things that he would do to achieve that goal, and it didn't matter who he had to take out. You know, other other people that were quote unquote alliances or rivals, he had no problem taking them out. The cops that got in his way, he definitely had no problem taking them out. Um, and it's like there was no limits that Frank White would go to, and Christopher Walken gives a very good performance in this movie. Um, in some ways, it's kind of subtle, but also too, it's like he's a very scary man at the same time. Because there's a few scenes where it's like, no, Frank White is a scary dude. Like he might portray himself as like this nice guy and everything, but when things really start to unravel and everything, he has no problem of kind of like letting go, and especially the balls that you have to pull up to a police officer's funeral and to kill a cop, right there like that, and then just drive off like it ain't like it wasn't nothing. I mean, yeah, Christopher Walken is very good in this movie, but everybody in this movie is very good, and this movie has a great cast of actors that you know show up in this movie. I mean, Lawrence Fishburne as Jimmy Jump, he steals the show in a lot of scenes that he's in, and everything. And then it's very stylish too. It almost feels like in some ways, it could be like a graphic novel in a way. The way it feels is because it's very stylish, and how it's made and everything. It feels like something. It's almost like the same thing how I feel about Black Rain, that takes place over in Japan and everything. It's just that look and feel of the movie. It feels almost like a dream in a way, but it's a nightmare if you really want to go that route. And everything. And I mean, it's probably one of the coolest gangster movies because it's not flashy or anything. It's not like New Jack City. It's not flashy or anything like that, but it's still a very cool movie. Especially with how most of it takes place at night. A lot of the intense things that happen, especially on the streets, it happens at night. I mean, aside from the whole shooting a cop at the in the funeral and everything, that takes place in broad daylight. But a lot of the other stuff, like the big stuff, it takes place at night or in a dark kind of moody setting. A lot of it takes place. So yeah, those are my top five. So I do have a few honorable mentions because I mean, going over this and everything, I couldn't just talk about five. So real quick, I'm going to bring up five movies that, I mean, they could have made the list, but they just right outside the top five. So Serpico is one. American Gangster is another. Across 110th Street, which I think is a very underrated movie that doesn't get talked about enough. Um, Inside Man is another one, which I did kind of mention a little bit, and Carlito's Way. Uh, those are my honorable mentions, and everything. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this little mini episode, this YouTube exclusive, if you will. But before I get out of here, I do want to ask you guys, the listeners, I want to ask you a couple of questions here. So the first question I'm gonna ask is, what's your favorite New York crime movie? um the second question I ask is, which movie should have made the top five from the honorable mentions, or if you have one of your own that I didn't even do as an honorable mention, um, and everything. And then New York crime movies are Los Angeles crime movies, because there are some good ones. I mean, Heat, of course, comes to mind. Set It Off is another one for me, at least. But um, which ones do you enjoy more? The ones that take place in New York or the ones that take place in Los Angeles? So yeah, I want to thank you guys for listening to this mini episode of me talking about my top five New York crime movies. Of course, you can hear all of the normal podcasts, the regular length podcast episodes, a part of the TV Zone podcast network, wherever you listen to your podcast at. Of course, you can hear all of the movie talk episodes that are now also on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, of course, listening to this episode, because like I say, this is a YouTube exclusive only mini episode. Um, definitely comment down below, or you can hit me up on at jmovietalk gmail.com. Let me know, what are your thoughts about the podcast? What are your thoughts about um recommendations that you want to hear? Just like, how do you feel about the podcast overall, pretty much, and everything. So again, I want to thank everyone for listening. Of course, I will be back for a full episode, as I will be doing Sorcerer. That will be a first time watch, like I said, or at the end of the last episode. Sorcerer is a first time watch for me, and I am really looking forward to talking about that on the podcast and everything like that. So I want to thank everybody for listening once again, and I will catch you guys for episode 373 as I'm talking about 1977 Sorcerer. So until next time, peace.